Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the Bible for June the 2nd. Your readings today find you wrapping up 2 Samuel chapter 20 and reading all of 2 Samuel chapter 21, Acts chapter 1, Psalm 121, 1 through 8, and Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. We're starting a new book today, the book of Acts, so we're going to give a little bit of an overview before we dive into it because Acts chapter 1 has a lot of stuff in it. Now, the book of Acts was written by Luke, as we know. In the very first verse of the letter, it says, "In my former book, Theophilus." Theophilus is the recipient of the book of Acts, also the recipient of the letter from Luke that we now call the Gospel of Luke. And so he is writing this to continue the story and to give the history of the church. Now, Luke is in this, not only is he writing this in third person, but at some point, as we'll see not too long from now, he's going to be writing it in first person accounting. So some of it comes from his conversations with people like Peter and with Paul, and other parts of it come when he actually travels with Paul. Now, Acts chapter 1 sees Jesus being ascended into heaven, and he reminds them of what it is that they're going to be doing, and he basically gives the outline for the book of Acts. In verse 8, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." Now, the book of Acts shows the spreading of the church. It starts in Jerusalem, and then it shows how it spreads from Jerusalem kind of out into Samaria and Judea, the rest of the country of Israel, basically. When you read Judea here, you need to read it as Israel, okay? So Israel and Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. So you're going to watch this bullseye expand outwards as the church grows. And so just keep in mind that as you read these stories, that's exactly what is happening in this accounting. So Jesus gives us the outline. Now, in verse 12, we see the beginning of choosing of Matthias. And you read this and you think, man, I thought gambling was bad. If you were raised Baptist, you think gambling is evil and wicked and horrible and terrible. And yet here are these guys that are praying over it. And then in verse 26, they cast lots. And the lot fell to Matthias. So he was added to the 11 apostles. Hold on a minute here, Jeremy. Really? Seriously? Casting lots? That's how they choose to replace Judas, is by casting lots. Yes. Yes, they did. See, we think of casting lots as rolling of dice, as playing some kind of gambling game. That's not how they viewed it back then. Back then, they viewed it as the sovereignty of God. In other words, they relied on God to use these items to toss. We don't know if they were really dice or what they were. Could have been drawing straws. Don't really know. But whatever it was, when they cast the lots, they were trusting in God's sovereignty to pick the one that he wanted. Okay? So when you look at it that way, you realize that God really is in control. If you believe that God is sovereign, that he has control over everything, then you have less of an issue with the casting of lots because you recognize that God's hand was going to be on it. And so it wasn't just chance that Matthias was picked over Barsabbas, aka Justus. He was picked because God wanted him to be picked. This is the beauty of God's sovereignty. The disciples trusted God's sovereignty. Now remember, they didn't yet have the Holy Spirit. And so they didn't have that Holy Spirit's guidance. So they trusted to this. You're not going to see any other accountings of them doing this. And why is that? Well, because they're about to be empowered with the counselor, the thing that Jesus promised when he said earlier, he said, you're going to have the Holy Spirit. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. So prior to this point, the disciples are a little lost. All they know is they've been told to sit tight and to stay here. But they know that there's going to be a time when something special is going to happen, and they're going to have to begin the mission. That mission's actually reminded of, just briefly hinted at in verse 11, when a pair of angels, men dressed in white, stood beside them as the apostles and the disciples looked up and watched Jesus ascending into the heavens. They said, "Why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who's been taken from you in heaven will come back in the same way that you have seen him go into heaven." In other words, guys, why are you staring up here? There's work to be done. There's a mission. Jesus has given you a mission. It's now time to go to work. Don't worry about what Jesus is doing right now. He'll be back. For now, you have a job to do. Get to it. All right. So that's our introduction to Acts. Tomorrow we'll dive into the chapters and some of our other readings. We'll talk more tomorrow.